the British English version. So you could watch the two side by side and have that one going, no way! Oh man! And in Britain you'll be, oh that's nice. How delightful. That's lovely. You still get the same intonation patterns, but the American one's kind of easier for teaching the kind of over-the-topness. Apologies for my American friends, but to me it sounds over-the-top, but I love it for teaching the pronunciation because it's so there. Sorry? You could take the telescope around the world and do the whole thing. As a follow-up activity, I get students to write 3 pieces of surprising news about themselves, but one of the pieces of news is false. They say the news to their partner practices using this language and then guesses which is the false piece of information. So that would be another sort of follow-up activity you could do with the video. But and of course I think you can use the video in other ways, but I do think it's when you spot those moments of authenticity within a kind of a video like that, it's great to use in the classroom. There's a problem with using video in the classroom though. We can sometimes talk about in lessons the idea that a lesson involves heads-up activities and heads-down activities, yeah? There are those moments in the lesson when your heads are up, the students' heads are up looking at the teacher, looking at each other. And there are moments when their heads are down in the course book or doing exercises. And for me, a good lesson has a nice balance of heads up, heads down activities. And if you've done a couple of heads down activities, you want that moment with the heads up. The problem with video or any screen-based activity is that video by its nature, if you show it in the classroom, is heads up, you're looking at a screen. But essentially, the movement is no different from heads down, because sometimes when you watch, observe a teacher using video in the lesson, to be honest, the students' heads are either up watching the video or down in the book, and there's no real reason why there's anybody else in the classroom, because they're just watching the video answering comprehension questions. So the heads up, heads down idea doesn't work, because it's the same, it's a one-way interaction between the student and the screen. My colleague Lindsay Clanfield came up with a third dimension. She said, well, let's have heads together. So there's heads down in the book, heads up looking at the screen, and then there's heads together talking to a partner. And it's a really useful model that I've started thinking about when I write video lessons. And if you can create a video task that combines collaborating the students with heads up, down and together all at the same time, I think that's kind of a really interesting type of video. So we're going to try a heads up, down together activity. And it's using a type of video called kinetic typography. Kinetic typography. You will have seen one of these, you just perhaps didn't know it was called kinetic typography. It's rather like an infographic image and text, but it moves on the screen. Now to do this, we're going to do the activity. I need you to create, ideally, groups of 3 or pairs if you can't manage it. But if you can naturally create a group of 3 or 4 if you have to, can you just create your group of 3 now? Or 4. Okay? Right. If you are a group of 3 or 4, the person in the middle, you need a pen and paper. You are the secretary. People in the middle, secretaries, can you wave your writing device at me? So I know I've got secretaries. Okay, secretaries, you're very important. Yep. What I want you to do, secretaries, is to write these numbers down. Very quickly. 7,190,000, 5 feet 4.5 inches, 2.5, 45, 28, 12,000, 9 million, and 2030. 2030. Okay, secretaries, you've got your numbers, yeah? By the end of the activity, which we won't do the whole thing today, the idea is that you've got these numbers, and this video, you are going to see these numbers floating around in the video, and they refer to something. For example, number 1, 7 billion refers to the world population. So the video is about global population. Now, it's difficult to watch a video and take notes and write it down, because it's kind of heads up and heads down at the same time. So you've got 2 helpers. Either side of you are the watchers, yeah? So this is to the other 2 people in the group. You are going to watch the video, look out for the numbers, and you're going to tell the secretary what the numbers refer to. So it's a kind of multi-skill activity. Secretaries are listening and writing, watchers are reading and speaking is your primary role. And it includes a variety of heads up, down and together, okay? Here we go. Watchers, you have to work hard. Secretaries, feel free to watch the video, particularly if the people who are supposed to be helping you are just rubbish, okay? So you might have to work a bit harder. Here we go with the video. Look out for the numbers. Try to write down as much as you can to get the answers. typical? 7 billion, are you typical? It's on YouTube, I'll give you the link at the end. So if you're sitting there thinking, I still don't know the answers, you can do this for homework, okay? Because I'm out of time now. The way I set this this up in class, this would normally take 60 minutes in a lesson to unpack. I would have done work on numbers, figures beforehand and so on, use it for looking at that language. But by putting the students in groups of 3, they watch it once, they try to know the information, then the secretary swaps places for the second viewing and I repeat it. And then I repeat it a 3rd time, so each student gets the opportunity to listen and write and to speak and read. By the end of it, they've constructed a pretty good summary of the video. You can easily adjust it for different levels. If you've got mixed ability at different levels, you just give different numbers. I mean, I gave you the advanced version here with about 9, but I could pick 4 or 5 if I wanted to and just focus on those. It varies. It's an interesting new kind of text type. Kinetic typography, people have made lots of kinetic typography videos. If you go on Google and you type kinetic typography plus and then the topic you're looking for, like products or iPhones or whatever the topic, you will probably find a kinetic typography video that somebody somewhere in the world has made. This is a particularly good one, but there are different examples. I think it has interesting implications for reading skills in terms of scanning for information and so on. It's kind of an interesting scanning exercise. And to be honest, the younger the student, the more readily they accept reading in this way, which is kind of interesting as well. It's like giving students infographics. But it also demonstrates how you can get heads up, down and together all going at the same time. There's an interesting kind of classroom dynamic that goes on. I think for developing note-taking skills, it has interesting potential to get students, because they swap the notes and they take over the note-taking and they can then reflect on different ways of taking notes, so it has potential. And obviously it then leads into the topic of world population, and this is actually in some of my materials connected with a reading text about global population as well. It's a kind of hot topic at the moment. This idea of heads up, down and together, I mean, I apply it to my materials design. Here's a page from a course book. I don't expect you to be able to read the exercises, but the point is that when I design my lesson, I can analyse each part of it and think, when are the students' heads down and together? When are they down? And you'll see certain activities, particularly the while they're watching, involve heads up, watching and taking notes some of the time. As the lesson continues, the after the watch use stage tends to involve more heads together, kind of pair work and group work. But by applying that sort of dynamic, you get a real feel for how the video lesson goes. And if you don't have any heads together type activities, you've probably got a fairly static video lesson. So it's a way of analysing your lesson planning. It's just another way of looking at a lesson plan. And I suspect it's probably true for the way we use interactive whiteboards in the class or any kind of screen-based teaching. We need to think about the issues of, are the students actually communicating with each other, or is it just a one-way thing between the screen and the student? This brings me on into the next point. One simple way to structure a video lesson is the idea of having before you watch activities, while you watch and after. And I think if you're basing an entire lesson around a video, like a TED Talk or something like that, something where the video is going to be used throughout the lesson, it's a useful kind of planning structure. And I kind of have my checklists of activities that I tend to use at the 3 different stages. I'm just going to talk you through them. You can play around with it, you've probably got your own, but for example, before watching, typically we might look at the title of the video, or I might write words from the video, or have screenshots from the video, and students predict what it's going to be about. Or you play part of the video with the sound off, they predict what it's going to be about. I would still class that as a sort of before watching the whole thing. Discussing the topic, leading questions. If you're using authentic video, quite often you might want to pre-teach certain vocabulary that you don't want to get in the way of the comprehension. While watching, a typical sort of lower order tasks, maybe comprehension questions. ticking the actions. So if it's a video with lots of different actions, you tick the ones that you see happen in the video and the ones that don't is useful. Particularly if you're going to show the video twice, the first viewing, it's quite useful to focus on what you see rather than what you hear, so you tick the actions that you see in the video. Note-taking for higher level students, maybe you'll fill in the blanks. And then I've got do nothing. Teachers are obsessed, we're all obsessed with giving them comprehension questions and having to know it's got an outcome. If you've got the right kind of video, I mean, I don't go to the cinema and expect somebody to give me a set of comprehension questions. It just doesn't happen. I might summarise the movie after it, what I liked about it, what I didn't like, but while I'm actually watching it, if it's an entertaining video, just show it, let them enjoy it, and then maybe show it again and do something else with it. But don't be afraid to just do nothing. Obviously, if it's a 45-minute video, you probably get into trouble with parents and stuff. But if it's a short, fun, interesting, engaging video, just let it run and let students enjoy it the first time through. Don't be hung up about that. Summarising the videos, useful summarising skills, good for the critical thinking, picking out the key points. Narrating the video, this is when I play the video again, but I class it as after watching. I turn the sound off. If it's a video that's been a documentary with just one voice speaking, I might give students phrases from the video, play the video in pairs, they take turns to be the narrator and they kind of re-narrate the video while it's playing on the screen. It's particularly good if you want to target certain key language and get them using it. And so they practice being the narrator. And I've seen teachers do stuff like, at home, students, if they've got the technology, have re-recorded their own voices onto the video and they've created their own narration. You can do things like that. This is kind of my final area, is creating a similar video. If you can find a video that stimulates the students to make their own video, there's no reason, either using a phone or a tablet, why students can't just produce a follow-up video. This is where we get into creative thinking. I'm going to show you, it's another video that I watched and I loved it for two reasons. First of all, it uses a particular language area authentically. When you watch it, you think, oh, this is my answer to this grammar point that I can use next week. The other thing is, it's just a video that is crying out for the students to create a similar video. I'm just going to show it to you and then we'll just talk about what students might do with it afterwards. This is called a micro-adventure, and it's a kind of an interesting change of approach for a National Geographic explorer. So what's the language point? What's the creative aspect?
This is my friend Alistair Humphreys. He's an adventurer and a writer, and in the summer he invited me on a micro-adventure in Croatia. The idea was to fit in as much as we possibly could in 24 hours and to make a short film about it. So first we made a toast. Give us the right start. We ate an ice cream. Al slapped a wall. We bought some bread, some grapes, some meat. We walked down some steps, hired a car and left the city. We drove through a tunnel, further down the coast, past this boat, over a bridge, round this bend. We found a river and went for a swim. We saw some fish and a dragonfly, and we sat in the river's current. Then we drove up into the mountains. We stopped at a castle where Al sat on a wall, and I tried to do an interview. We drove along this trail where we finally abandoned the car and distributed all the food that we had. We walked up a path, through some trees, saw a butterfly. We hiked further up out to the tree line, and finally made it onto the top of a mountain with an incredible view of the coastline. We had some water and watched the sunset. We made a sandwich and had a beer. We took a photo of the city lights below. You could hear music in a bar playing faintly in the distance. I pointed rather courageously, as did Al. And we slept in bivvy bags on the top of the mountain. We woke up next to this rock, yawned and drank some water. We rolled up the sleeping mats. I ate a banana and Al brushed his teeth. I filmed some sunshine and Al filmed his mum. Then we walked off the mountain, under the clear morning skies. We walked down past the town, had a shower on the way, found a cafe, ordered a coffee. Al ruined an interview, but I struggled with the focus. Then we kept walking until we reached the shoreline, walked down to a beach, and we went swimming in the Mediterranean Sea. It was a great little adventure. Thanks, Al.
Okay, what was the language point? Probably simple past is what I instantly thought. I thought, oh, this is the best simple past lesson. There are other areas, there's prepositions in there. It's full of vocabulary, there's holiday language, there's object language, there's a variety, I mean, there's a whole different load of ways you could use this video. But in terms of if you're looking for an original way to deal with the simple past, it's got to be the one. The other thing about the video is, and Alistair Humphreys, who made it, has a website, and he talks about encouraging students in particular to go out and have their own micro-adventure. And it's basically making a video story of your life over 24 hours. So it kind of means it's if you've got time to get students to have their own micro-adventure and make their own kind of video. Now, the only thing about having students make videos is that from bad experiences I've had, that students spend so much time worrying about the technology and the editing, there isn't actually much English practice going on. So it just becomes an exercise, which is sort of fine, except because the video contains English, so there's that motivation to get the English right and present something. But what I suggest doing, when you set up the situation where you want students to create a video, and even if they don't end up making the video, put students into groups, and I always use this pro forma. So this is, you've got the time column sort of for a 2-minute video. It's like a storyboard. And in this side you put, what will you video or see? So this is telling you what you see. Now students might draw pictures, they can describe what they're going to film. And in this column they write what's going to be said, what they think we're going to hear in English, so they have to make notes on that. Now, I like using this in class because if I put them in groups, I can walk around and they're trying to get their ideas in English on this worksheet. And so just the actual planning of the video is creating a whole load of English and getting them to use language from, that they're going to use in their video. So it's the planning that makes it generative in terms of the language. And sometimes you can do this activity and then they don't have to make the video. It's just getting them into groups and getting them to think about, well, what kind of video would I make? And then they plan it. So it's this kind of one-page pro form is just useful to always have for that kind of lesson because it really makes sure that they're using English. I really recommend it as an approach to creative thinking. I want to finish with an example. A teacher from the Ukraine wrote to me some time ago. She'd been to a workshop where I'd suggested at the end of a unit of a course book, so if you've done a unit on sport, one of my activities to suggest to teachers, you say to the student, you've done a unit on sport, now for homework, take a photograph of sport in relation to your life. Maybe it's you watching sport, maybe it's you doing sport. Then they bring the photo into class and they present it. And it's a way of recycling the language from the unit. It's a nice creative thinking task. This teacher from the Ukraine writes to me, she said, I liked your idea, so I did it with a unit on food. And I told the students to take a photograph. But there were a group of 4 girls in the class who thought, well, we're going to go one better than that. We're not going to do a boring photo. We're going to do a video and we'll do a tour of our city showing the viewers what places there are to eat. And I just love the video because it's students having fun with English. You'll see how they demonstrate that they're recycling the language because they do something clever with the subtitles. And they just take you on a little tour around their city in the Ukraine of good places to eat. And it's a fantastic example of what video can really do in the classroom. Here we go. And this was just on their phones.
So we drunk in a stripe and a trouser suitcase.
Hello, Ina! Today we're going to tell you about the most interesting places in Poltava, where you can get some food and drinks.
Sound check in a black box of a venue. That it remembers every flight. That it remembers every fight.
I want to tell you about Vishna. It's a small cozy cafe in which you can take away some vodka drinks and sweets. The most interesting thing at that place is that the panoramic windows look out over the beautiful sky and the center of Moldova.
Every night, like you're still holding your fast.
Second, Halushka is a home-style cooking restaurant with Ukrainian food like borщ, halushki, vareniki, stuffed with meat, and not only. Also, Halushka has very cozy home-style interior where you can go with your friends and family and spend free time in very funny way.
Guys, Joe.
Okay, you get the idea. Then the video goes on for about 5 minutes, and then they show you outtakes at the end where it went wrong. So it's quite an extended video. But it's a good example of students being creative and trying to use the language in an interesting way. And it's a very simple kind of concept, really, but it just shows you. My tip number 9 is allow students to share their videos. If you have a classroom blog or website or some way of sharing, it's kind of a lot of fun. And it's also students generating content in English, which they're then sharing with each other. I'm just mentioning this. This is Magda Degoła in Poland. A couple of years ago, she set up her own competition, A Day in the Life of, and she invites students from around the world to make a very simple day in the life video that they then enter into a competition, and she gets a few prizes. I'm one of the judges on the competition. I'm afraid this year the deadline has passed, but there will be one next year, and you kind of need plenty of planning time. But also, if you look out for the winners, you'll get an idea of the kind of things that students produce, and the quality and standard goes up every year. We get elementary students entering, the language level is low, but the video quality is amazing. We've had entrants from all over the world, including Italy, but we get entrants from the Philippines. The winner last year came from one of the countries in Africa, can't remember the name of it. But it's gone from being just this sort of little local competition into something that Magda's ended up becoming this international thing. It's just a way of students sharing their work. It's nice project work. If you want full details, you can email her at video.contest@wp.pl or email me if you want, and I'll put you in touch so you can take a look at the entrance to see what kind of thing they're looking for. But it's a nice way of sharing video. And it's making English learning more authentic, more fun. Tip number 10 is try it all out. So you can take a picture of this slide or you can download the slides, but basically a new view of the moon, 7 billion are you typical, the micro adventure, those 3 videos are all of those links. To be honest, if you just Google them or put them into YouTube or Vimeo, you'll find them. So you can try them out. If you're interested in micro-adventure, if you look at the pre-intermediate level of life on the National Geographic stand, my lesson plan is in there for that, looking at the past simple. So you can take a look and see what I did with it. National Geographic Short Film Showcase, fantastic resource, tons of really cool films. I did a webinar on this topic a few months ago, but I included some other ideas. That's the link, there's a recording of the webinar. National Geographic Learning has a whole selection of webinars coming up, but there's a recording of the one I did about using video. And I've just started writing a series of blog posts on the In Focus website for National Geographic. There'll be a series of blog posts about using video in the classroom. I'll be talking about a few more ideas and some of the ideas I've talked about today. And you can download the slides from John Hughes ELT. Thank you very much for coming.